Great. Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Industry Connects event with the Glasgow Film Festival. I'm Emma van der Putten. I'm the industry coordinator for Glasgow Film Festival. We've got a really great session today on festival collaboration from both the festival programmer side, but also from the filmmaker side. So before we get started, I'll just introduce everybody that we've got here today, although I'm sure everybody knows a lot of these faces. So first we've got my colleague Alan Hunter, who is the festival co-director of the Glasgow Film Festival. We have Grania Humphreys, who is the festival director of the Dublin International Film Festival. We have Tom Sullivan, who's the director of the Irish film Aracht and the producer of that film, Cuan Machingale, as well. I know we were due to have Brian Welsh with us. He's not quite available at the moment, but he might turn up at some point for a wee surprise visit. So I'll keep everybody on your toes. But also, we'd love to get questions from anybody. So I know this is live on Facebook and on YouTube. So if you want to ask anybody a question, just comment below and we'll get to it hopefully when we can. So thanks everybody for being here today, for joining us. And I guess we might focus on just the festivals for a little bit. So I know, Aracht was a submission to Glasgow Film Festival and was also our Audience Award winner. It's fantastic. So Grania and Alan, do you want to maybe kind of explain a bit of the importance of submission to the way that you put together both festival programs?
Sure. I mean, yeah, okay. I mean, the Aracht story is quite interesting, I guess, because it came as a submission. And submissions generally, you don't know much about them. You're just taking them on face value. There's usually a team of viewers, so the films may be watched twice at least at the beginning, and they will either say, "Love this, we need to move it on to the next bit of the process," or somebody loves it, somebody doesn't, it still moves on, or two people or more say, "Nah, sorry, this one's not for us." So I think it was Chris in the GFF team who first saw it and was really enthusiastic, and it was like, I really don't care what anybody says, this is going in the program. And it's that kind of passion that makes you think, right, yeah, we really need to look at this. So I looked at it as well, agreed with him, and then I think was it at Tallinn? Yeah. So there was a review there from a colleague of mine, Finn, at Screen International, which was a very kind of positive review that confirmed a lot of what you'd thought about it as well. So basically on that kind of group of things, it was in the festival. And then, because we have the Audience Award for first and second features, it's like, well, it's a no-brainer. The jury has to be up for that as well. And the fact that, it was at Dublin as well does mean that you can then program things so that people do get those kind of two bites of the cherry and can do their launch there and then come to Scotland and do their launch here too. So that's the kind of best scenario for something that comes into the submissions process. But everything that comes in is taken seriously. Everything is watched. Everything is in with a chance. I mean, we're kind of literally watching submissions for 2021 as we speak. I don't know about you, Grania, I seem to be getting an awful lot of films with unresolved endings.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I do think actually, just to echo what Alan says, I mean, submissions for us are slightly different than I think they are for Glasgow, and then I think we have a slightly reduced number that we actually accept in. But what they do, which I think is really important, is they provide a very democratic process where all filmmakers can know that their films are seen, are watched, and that they have been evaluated, as opposed to just cherry picking from the festivals over the summer before in the way in which you might see films in Cannes or Toronto, etc. The other side to it is I think submissions are a fantastic way of seeing the trends, particularly maybe in documentary. You can see a certain subject returned to again and again. It's also a really great way of getting a sense of what's happening within a particular country. You know, you can sometimes see the same actors popping up, the same kind of tropes. And from somebody who's a very limited team, that's brilliant, because it really is a way of connecting. Also, it meant that this year I was quite used to sitting in my bedroom watching stuff, because I didn't have the distraction of the social aspect of going to an actual physical festival and watching films. Now, I think the downside of submissions is around the idea that you are sitting on your own in a bedroom. And I think that the genre that maybe misses out the most in that, and I would always warn filmmakers about this, are comedies.
Yeah.
Alan and I, and sometimes Alison Gardner, are unique in that we have a sense of humor, and it's a very, very good one. But it is hard to find humor if you're watching it at 9 o'clock in the morning, or it's something that has a kind of raucous, better after 2 drinks kind of attitude to it. And also humor is very subjective, as we know. So you're kind of trying to think of what would this be like if it was not just me on a couch, but actually 260 people laughing their heads off. So I think, you know, submissions I think are really interesting. I've had some fantastic discoveries. I mean, really fantastic discoveries. I remember seeing Joanna Hogg's Unrelated on a Saturday morning and just going, this is amazing. You know, this is somebody I really, really enjoying their work. And I genuinely kind of, you know, you're so excited, you do the email that minute. You know, you don't wait until, I don't know, a Monday or a weekday, and you do it kind of instantaneously. But I would say in terms of submissions, a lot of the time, you know, if we're honest, you're watching submissions and after 20 minutes, you're going, why on earth? It's one of 2 questions. Why on earth did they make this? Or why on earth did they think that my festival was the one that was right for it? Because it takes maybe an extra 15 minutes to work out what that festival normally shows or thinks about, or you know, kind of programs around, and it may be wrong. And also submissions are now quite expensive. So for filmmakers, I'm always conscious about thinking just a second beat before you send out that list of submissions, because otherwise, I know on the other hand, it's like a bad Tinder date. You're just getting constant no's, you know, and a lot of the time a film is not getting selected, not necessarily because it's not a good film. It might be a variety of different reasons that unfortunately those awful what you call them, form letters, do you know what I mean, can imply. You know, sometimes it's literally, I have 5 of these films on this subject, or I have all the French films I can include, or do you know what I mean, all of these things. But the one thing I would say about submissions, and I think it's also a case in relation to Dublin and Glasgow, is as much as there's official submissions, there's a constant back and forth of things that we've seen and not seen, liked, disliked, wanted to get, heard great things about, which kind of operates through the submission process. You know, I saw something great last Saturday. It was amazing. Can you share me the link? No, but I'll, you know, and I think that's the other side to submissions. It helps you to kind of get a year's worth of cinema viewing. Do you know what I mean? In a structured way that you can find it. Because I know I'm a terrible person. If it's in my emails, I'll struggle to remember how to actually track it back. But you know, Film Freeway and other structures are fantastic.
Yeah,
I think that's very true as well, because it expands beyond, you know, those official submissions, because there are other filmmakers who maybe been to the festival and say, I've got a friend who's made their first feature. It'd be really great if you could take a look at that. Or within the Scottish film industry, there are people traveling all over the place and having all kinds of connections, and sometimes suggesting things to you. Oh, I was at a film festival there. This is a film that seems really under the radar. I don't know why it's not getting more attention. And you're like, yes, please, I'll take a look at that. And also sales agents bombard you, sometimes with really good stuff. It's like, and they, as Gráinne said, maybe they have a better sense sometimes of what they think might work for you, of sort of saying, we've dealt with you over a number of years. We know you have a great passion for South Korean cinema or something like that. Here's something new that we've got. Please take a look at that. So yeah, and I mean, Gráinne is an invaluable source of recommendations and tips, because, you know, it's true. And she talked to Alison, and Alison will come back and say, oh, Gráinne's talking about this film, you heard about that. And then you kind of chase up that as well. So yeah, there's all these little networks of connections that lead films to you, or lead you to some filmmakers that you maybe don't know or haven't heard.
Yeah, I suppose that's worth mentioning as well, because our festivals are, you know, they often overlap in terms of dates for getting talent over, things like that, working together, kind of not just sharing films, but also, you know, contacts for having guests is a really important part of it, for getting, you know, great talent over to this side of the world.
I mean, I kind of like the fact that we're very kind of cooperative and supportive in that way, because there's an awful element of film festivals that are much more competitive about, well, I'm not telling them about that film because I want to show that film, or I'm not going to show that because you've already shown it, or it's been somewhere else. And even at a very high level, I mean, this year festivals were supposedly, you know, pulling together to make a great statement for the future of the cinema and working in harmony. But, you know, you hear lots of things about arguments they were having over premiere statuses and who got the grabs on one. And it's like, actually, nobody cares about that. People just want to show good movies, and audiences just want to have some kind of confidence in your curation and your selections, knowing that that's the criteria. You know, you're showing things that you have a passion for, that you like, that you admire, etc. And it's not really about, oh, this would be a premiere, this would get us somebody, etc. I think we need to put all that to one side.
I think some of that comes from the fact we're both audience festivals. I mean, I know we kind of have industry elements to the actual event, but it's very definitely driven as a kind of broad showcase of world cinema, running from, you know, Lav Diaz, do you know what I mean, to shorts, do you know what I mean, and everything in between. But I think what's curious from my point of view is that, you know, that premiere status was something that we kind of addressed in our first year and said, you know, whichever works for us. If you want to take it on the Friday night, we'll take it on the Saturday night. What, you know, way it's defined, you know, I don't, you know, a UK premiere, which we have to explain constantly to sales agents, do you know what I mean, is one thing, and we don't care about that. And it's about, you know, if the talent goes to Glasgow on a Friday, we'll take them on the Saturday. And it is a very attractive proposition if you are traveling from LA or from New York, you know, to say that you can come to two significant festivals within a kind of 4-day window, who will work with each other to make sure that it's the easiest way that you can do what you're meant to do all of your press, and then be taken care of, you know. And I think that's been a way that we've worked in the past. And also hilariously, and I do mean this hilariously because I'd love to claim that we planned it, but we have found, I think, over the years that the programs have overlapped. We can program completely separately in different rooms, different countries, and yet there's been hilarious connections of films that we've found that we've put on, and regularly we have this conversation about the schedule and find out that we put it on exactly the same night. So I think there is a connection between the two festivals, which is also about seeing the audiences for a particular film. You know, like that's a 6:30 on a Friday. Do you know what I mean? Or that's a Saturday afternoon.
All the time.
That's the only thing that's really funny about it, is that it happens and has consistently happened since about 2009. We've actually had these conversations, and that's kind of nice, you know, knowing that. I think I've been once to Glasgow for closing night, and I think Alison has been over as well to see something, because we moved once quite significantly, and that meant we could actually, you know, travel. But it does feel familiar. Do you know what I mean? As a festival, I know you're going to be talking to Kuan and Tom and the other filmmakers in a minute. But if that's what's really curious from my point of view, that it's not just a geographical proximity. There seems to be a kind of sympathy in about the way in which we program and the way in which we engage with our audiences, that makes it very easy to work together, and being grown-ups and not being competitive and trying to put films and filmmakers and audiences first, rather than some, you know, weird ego trip about, you know, premiere status.
Yeah, and I suppose, you know, Glasgow has a similar sensibility to maybe Irish audiences. You know, there's kind of a similar sense of humor or way of film viewing that kind of resonates between the two. But Kuan and Tom, when you were thinking about, you know, you're completing your film and you're thinking about what festivals you want to go to, what were we the two top of your list, you know? How did you approach, you know, what film festivals you were gonna screen at?
Well, you start off with like when you're making a film, you're always imagining, you know, you're going to be in Sundance, you're going to win an Oscar, and then it's all going to be so easy. It doesn't obviously work that way. And every festival, again, what you start to realize is every festival, number one, has a personality, but also obviously has a business end to it. So, and then they're trying to get global splits. So, if you're making an Irish language film about the famine, a period Irish language film about the famine with no known international stars, you fall into the subcategories of those bigger festivals. And that's just a fact. I mean, even if you get into one of the bigger festivals, which is a big if, you then possibly end up with a sort of, the midnight slot or whatever. So we applied for all of them. I mean, people ask me, what was your strategy, your film festival strategy? Myself and Tom had many discussions. And our film strategy was, we just want an audience to see this. So we will apply to every single festival. We obviously were hoping for, and brilliantly going made it happen first, get a home audience, get a home festival, but really it was applied to all of them. I mean, there's an awful lot of seminars you go to and people say very, very clever things, but I have filled in, and Keir, my colleague, has filled in, Jesus, like hundreds of festival applications, and it's, and you write and you research the festival, you see what they like, but it's a business. There's a lot of business about business, and you simply, depending on the film that you have, and I heard guys talking about looking at the festival in terms of why go to that film. Some festivals you don't apply for because you think, and actually it's just not a fit. But when you're as small as us, and that isn't to say, I think Arthur is a fucking amazing, to speak my language, film, but just on the headline, who is viewing it? There's a whole sort of hierarchical structure of, a first viewer and then past and second viewer. So it's an Irish language period piece. Once you get beyond that and then view it as a film, but then so it's I'd like to say that we had clever thoughts beforehand and we had a strategy, but we definitely wanted Dublin. That was, we're Dubliners. We wanted that, and then brilliantly Glasgow, and Tallinn, obviously, which was where we had our sort of premiere, and there was lots of discussions about Tallinn or Berlin, and you've got to make choices because everybody's looking for the premiere. So when you fill in the application, people say, "Is this the premiere?" Well, it is in that country, but you might have had the premiere. You find all sorts of ways of trying to bend the rules. And lie possibly might be a more accurate term, and when you're filling the form, because you just want it to get seen. So Tallinn was brilliant, and they were really supportive. And then so there isn't a strategy. I'd like to say something clever. I don't. We just filled in applications and hopes.
I think Cuan's being like really honest there, and I like. You kind of have to look at it from a filmmaker's point of view, and what me and Cuan want to do is make more films. That's what we want to do. We obviously want people to see Arrow. We've told a story, and we want people to see it, and obviously that's a huge part of what we do. But also, we're in it for the long haul. So we're thinking, how do we use this to get it out there for people to see it, and then also to make the next application, the next screenplay development, the next production development a little bit easier. And where you go for that is the big festivals. That's what you want. Because the people who give the money out to filmmakers like me and like Cuan, that stuff, they notice that stuff. And if they're lying to you if they tell you they don't, but if they see the big Venice or the big Berlin or the big, their ears prick up, and we know that. And unfortunately, that was our strategy, and that's, to be very honest. Now, I will say, we could have showed. There are other festivals in Ireland where we could have showed, but me and Cuan always thought that Dublin, because we're both Dubs, and we both came up through the Irish language system in Dublin and have benefited hugely from that. That we thought it was a real natural place for it to be was Dublin, and thank God we had Grania, because I had a chat with Grania early on before all this started, and like when you talk about strategy, she really opened my eyes, because I was lucky enough to sit across the table with somebody for an hour who just kind of told me where it was at in terms of festivals and how I should be thinking, as opposed to being naive. And I found that a great help. And she mentioned very early on the Glasgow connection as well. So I think a strategy started to form as we started to get into it. But I think it all started with Grania, really. We were lucky that was our first step,
Well, thanks, John. But I think there's another thing that's kind of interesting, Emma, here, and it's around like what you get from being in one of those big festivals. Do you know what I mean? And what you can actually get from being in. Like, I've felt very sorry for a lot of the films that were in Venice this year because they didn't get reviewed. Do you know what I mean? And that's a really interesting thing because a lot of people go to those festivals because that's what they wanted. And I think it was really interesting that in the conversations that I had with Kuan, do you remember, Kuan, we were talking about the fact that we knew that there was a really good review in screen for the film, and that the Talon slot, do you know what I mean, would actually then deliver a review that would actually then get kind of, you know, a promotion and a profile, which was kind of key to the film. And I think that's another element that's really important, you know, is that what can a festival give a filmmaker? Do you know what I mean? It may not be a prize, it may not be, you know, the red carpet in Cannes, but if it can actually get you something like the review that Finn gave Arak, do you know what I mean? And then it actually suddenly you actually have a global reach and people are actually talking about it, you know? The other thing that I think
can I just say, like, while we didn't have a plan beforehand, once once Talon landed, and we showed the film to reviewers in London in a sort of special screening, and then we had Talon. And then you actually can start to construct a narrative then. And so then the next one is like that this great film coming home from Talon is coming to Dublin, you know, and literally at that moment your film is live. So wherever you start off or wherever it is that you're going, you now construct the narrative. So it doesn't matter how many application forms where you were told you were rejected or whatever, any of that, you're going, all right, this is now it. This is the story. And if you can construct a good narrative around it and get your press, and a lot of the time, particularly in the lower budgets, you yourself are doing it. You might have, you know, a little help here and there. And again, people like Going are you know, really strong and help in terms of Irish filmmakers. But you then try to construct an argument and go, this is the truth. And the rest just didn't happen. I mean, I'm saying this, you know, all the other applications, you know, they just disappear. And you go, right, this is we always wanted that. And we did. We had a really strong narrative there for the first 6 months. And Irish is still, you know, traveling the world and doing and it's in Luxembourg. I was in Luxembourg last night at an actual. There were actual people present. Would you believe? Sitting in the cinema, and they paid money to see it. So you know that's So you try and then what's next then from that? You know, Glasgow was brilliant for that. It just really gave a backbone to the film. You know, as an Irish language with no stars, period piece. You look for any percentages that gets you over into people's vision.
But on what you said, Granny, I mean, I remember Kuan mentioned earlier as well that, you know, when we were offered Talon and we all wanted the big Berlin, you know, one of the big five, and we were waiting and it was like, will we wait for Berlin or won't we? And thank God we didn't, because we didn't get into Berlin. But also, I remember I called a friend of Kuan's and mine's, Emer Reynolds, and asked her about it. And I said, what should we do? And she goes, don't wait. She said, I made that mistake. She said, get your festival life started. Get it going. Get it out there. Start, as Kuan said, start building your narrative now, you know, and start getting your film into it. You know, don't be hanging around and waiting. She said, a lot of the time what can happen with those big festivals is, you know, you show in a, you know, you're in America, you show in a shopping mall at like, you know, 6 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday morning, and okay, you get the laurels of Toronto or you get the laurels of Berlin, but nobody sees it and you don't get reviewed. Whereas Talon, which Talon is by no means a small festival, it's you know, we discovered, it's actually it's one of the foremost European festivals, but what Talon, as you said, did give us was an incredible springboard, you know, and a beginning. So that, you need to remember that as a filmmaker, you know, don't worry about the big ones as much, because you can garner a lot of traction from something that you think isn't maybe. It depends on who sees it, who reviews it. You know, that's hugely important. So yeah.
I mean, I think that is a great piece of advice, because you know that people will come to you with a film and maybe it's something that you respond to really enthusiastically, and they know that you get the film and that you're passionate about it, etc. And they're like, yeah, but we're going to wait to see if we can get into Berlin, get into Cannes. And you're like, well, even if you do, you're maybe not going to get the space you want, the attention you want, the profile you want. And they wait and they don't get into the big festival and they don't get into Cannes. And then it's 6 months later. And you're kind of saying, you should have gone. You should have gone, we loved the film. Or some festival loved the film. And actually, if you get someone that feels like they're championing it, why would you not go with the offer you got?
And also, don't overlook the influence that festival programmers have and who they speak to as well, which is huge. As opposed to just slipping into one of the bigger festivals, and none of the programmers really, their attention is somewhere else, and you don't get that behind the scenes traction that we got from Grania and yourself,
Yeah, it was really positive.
I was just going to say, I can't remember now, but did you have a sales agent on ARACT, and at what point did they come on board, and what did they play in terms of your strategy for the film?
Sorry, I missed that. There was a break up there. Sorry.
I can't remember, was there a sales agent attached to the film?
No. There was so no, we didn't. Again, there's a whole the world of sales agents, which is another beast. So no, we were involved. We went straight to Growing. We went straight to yourselves. We weren't. There was a period, like when it came to Talon, we didn't have a sales agent attached at that stage. This is sort of a complicated story, but and retrospectively, you should apparently. When you're having your launch, if you don't have a sales agent on at that moment, the skin for the money for them, whatever they work as, they're not interested. My father passed away when it was supposed to be in Talon, so in a complicated sort of way, kind of influenced some of that. But in many ways, I'm not sure it would have made any difference, because the film did really well out of Talon all by itself, and launched away from that, and then on to you guys, and continues its journey. So no, there was no sales agent at that stage. So we filled in the application form.
I'm just thinking, because a sales agent is both good and bad in terms that they are really out there pitching to get your film probably into the big festivals, but equally they can have strategies that don't necessarily make sense to some of us as to what their expectations are for a film, or where they feel it should go or not go, and all that kind of stuff. So I was just interested in pros and cons of having a sales agent attached.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you have somebody to help, advise in that, because the festival circuit can be so intimidating, and there's so many different festivals that you could potentially go to have someone that could help guide you.
Yeah.
Karen, you went and met all the gang though, didn't you? We brought a bunch of festival programmers in, and I think did the two of you, or did you meet Julie and Sharon and all of that gang? Because I think that's what's really interesting is when you actually bring programmers and filmmakers together. Do you know what I mean? And you actually take sales agents out of that conversation, it becomes much cleaner.
Much cleaner. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're now having an actual conversation, again, obviously the film industry itself is split into many different categories. We're not making 100 million films starting X, Y, or Z or whatever. So you're into different spaces immediately anyway. And it's about making films, as Tom said earlier. It's about, making that film that you've made, trying to make, there are stories you want to tell. So the more people you can eliminate from the process and get directly to, and that applies to the festival as well. If you can actually speak, and in my experience, when you get to speak to the people who run the festivals, they're gorgeous people who love film. So, and they can even tell you, well, look, that film isn't, I mean, we were talking to a woman in Toronto. She loved the film, but she said, I can't get you a good slot. Therefore, I don't think you should go there. They'll speak to you honestly, and give you the proper kind of, you're still disappointed, you're still this, you're still that, but it all makes sense, in terms of what you're trying to do, and you understand everything from their perspective. Of how a film like that works. Like, I thought, ARACT was brilliant for us to get into Dublin, but I thought ARACT worked really well for Dublin Film Festival as well. It was a mutually beneficial, event. Yeah.
And
So
new talent and new audiences and a kind of dynamic kind of story, which was a really, I mean, you know, and for me, I was kind of curious because it felt like, you know, the Black 47 was kind of championed as the first famine film, and it felt like, you know, there were loads of other stories that could have been told, and here was a really, really interesting film that had loads of different talents involved in it, and it didn't have that kind of compendium aspect of some parts of kind of Lance's film, you know. And I thought also, and this is the really annoying thing about this COVID thing, which we haven't mentioned yet, is that it really felt like there was an energy and a momentum coming from that. And I remember, because I met you the day that you found out about the Audience Award in Glasgow, and there were just these smiles plastered on your face. Do you know what I mean? It was kind of like, yay, you know, and we've got this, and it'll go on the poster, and we've got, you know, this energy and the social media buzz coming out of the screenings, and then lockdown. Do you know what I mean? So it was particularly harsh. Do you know what I mean? I mean, in that case, you know, unfortunately, if you'd had a complete disaster and walkouts, do you know what I mean? It would have had, you know, that same kind of ability to just cut you off at the knees. And I kind of sense that there is a huge amount of enthusiasm for the film. Do you know what I mean? That we've just paused, that both festivals have kind of paused until the kind of restart does happen again, whenever that is.
No, I do. I was chatting to the lead actor earlier today, and he just signed unofficial, but he has just signed with a one of the biggest agencies in the world, like from Arroch. And we actually started shooting Arroch 2 years today.
Oh wow!
The 24th of September was our first day on set, and I was chatting to him about it, and he was just saying it has done so much for us already as filmmakers. And it hasn't even come out, you know, but it's already been such an incredible experience, and it's already paid dividends for us, just in terms of our confidence as filmmakers. And the beginning of that journey was Dublin and Glasgow. And I mean, you know, look, we won the Glasgow Audience Award, and we won the Critics Award in Dublin, you know, and like, that doesn't necessarily mean we were the best film in the festival or any of that stuff. But I think of all the films that were there, we really needed that. Like, I think it was something that sometimes something happens, and what it did was it propelled me during lockdown to write. That experience I had in Glasgow and in Dublin kind of told me, look, you're doing something right here. Now, not that I need an award to tell me that, but the reaction from the audiences, from you, Alan, from you, Brian, and our experience at both festivals, for a filmmaker, you know, I will always be indebted, because it has already started a new journey for me in terms of, okay, I can't do anything else but write, so go for it. And I got busy, you know, and you know, it's paying off, and that's because of the, you know, I just want to thank you guys for your support.
Are you making money now, Tom?
No,
Yeah.
making money.
Yeah, we're paying.
Yeah.
Let's not ask for the stars. Yeah.
Maybe in about, yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
The other thing that's good, and I've always been really conscious of about Dublin and Glasgow, is that dynamic of kind of first-time filmmakers that have kind of been supported by the festival, and that idea of, you know, bringing people like, you know, as Kuhn and Tom said, you know, with casts that there isn't, you know, a big Hollywood A-lister there with a fan base of millions in order, you know, and you are kind of bringing an audience to it and saying, listen, discover something, you know, new and interesting and exciting. And I think what I also think is nice is that ability to be part of that community for the duration of a festival. And it's lovely when people do go to Glasgow and Dublin, because you feel like you're tapping into both, you know, and that, you know, guests who are in Glasgow will be coming to Dublin, or if they're in Dublin, they'll be going to Glasgow. And of course, this all came to a crashing halt the year we had it snow, in which case we both had half of a filmmaker team who didn't want to be there.
We still got some of them in Glasgow. You know, they've not got home yet. You know.
But I do think that is a really important part of festivals. Do you know what I mean? Is that conversations at dinners or at receptions, or, you know, screening, or the smokers outside, where it's kind of like, what have you just come out of? What are you going into? What are you going to see? You know, and a lot of people that I know, Kuhn and Tom would have known, were showing films, and there was a great sense of people coming along to support you on a Friday, and, you know, their film being on a Monday. And it's one of the parts that I really like about about festivals. You know, is that sense of a community coming along to something to support them and being, you know, involved, because the rest of the year they're working.
Massively important for all of us, you know. I think it's bigger than anything else, really. I don't know, it creates a sense of it gives you a sense of traction, I think, as a, you know, because you've made your film and now you're showing it, and you get to actually as a filmmaker, you get to really feel for the first time if what you've done has worked or not. And you know, and I think that's massive. It's massive for you as a learning curve, and also in terms of your confidence going forward, particularly somebody who's kind of early, like it's my first feature, so it's huge. It was huge for me. Yeah.
I think the good thing as well, and the Glasgow screenings of the film is you could tell that audiences got the film, just in terms of the Q&As. The things that came up that people made connections to, of sort of saying, you know, it's a strange thing to say, but there's a Scottish element to this story too that we kind of get, because people that left Ireland, a lot of them came to Scotland, and there's things that ripple down through those centuries that mean something to us here, that means that we have a connection to the film and the story in the film in some way.
Yeah.
And also, just in terms of that film, but sometimes other films, the way that word of mouth ripples through. You know, your first screening, you know that people are being there because they know there's a cast, there's crew, there's your first chance to see it. But then when it works, the tickets for the second screening suddenly take a big leap, because the number of people that have gone out and said, I saw that, it was really good, the director was amazingly eloquent, and you must come and see him again. Those kind of things. But you could sense that with Arath, that boom, the second screening, there was almost expectation then, because people had talked about it, and that had kind of gone through that community that Gráinne was talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess, like, how do we try and replicate that in-person quality that makes festivals so special now? You know, we were so lucky that we were, you know, the kind of the last festivals supposed to really just have a full run before everything got locked down. Very lucky with the timing of things. So it's, you know, how do we figure it out?
I mean, I've been watching. I feel like I've been watching other festivals tackle this problem pretty much since the 2 weeks after Dublin finished. You know, like watching Copenhagen, I think, with the Vilnius, do you know what I mean? Sort of move online and seeing how people have tackled it, whether it's kind of like drive-ins or you do, you know, conversations afterwards. I mean, I think there's two groups that are really important, and I'm kind of conscious that I'm not quite sure they're being included as much. I mean, one is filmmakers, because I think it is really important that filmmakers are involved. It feels like it's kind of, you know, how do you do those screenings, and the pre-recorded introductions? How do you do the Q&As? If people are really looking for kind of feedback about how a film impacts on an audience, if it's online, it's really difficult to do. So, I mean, I think we're trying to do something where it's a sort of hybrid, and I really hope that the percentages are more towards physical than online, because that would be my preference, you know. The other group is audiences, because I think there's huge potential in this, and I am an optimist, so I would say that. But I think there's a huge potential for audiences that are either intimidated by film festivals, or they feel that they're filled with cinephiles, or that there's an age group who are just not going to the cinema in the numbers that they used to 10 years ago. So I think there's opportunities. I think it means festivals have to adapt to that, and they have to maybe think about those audiences in different ways. I know that I have found it really difficult to work out what kind of film. I know how a film works in a cinema. I know exactly when that will work for an audience, and I know that they'll come to see it. I know that it would, again, what would play at 5 o'clock on a Friday evening. It's really hard to work out how slow a film can be before everyone reaches for the kettle, you know. And I think that's a really interesting thing, and I think that's going to mean that the choice and the selections of festivals will suddenly, I don't want to say condense, but it'll change. you know, and I think the filmmakers whose work is, you know, slow or contemplative is going to struggle, because it feels like that's a difficult sell in the world that we're in. And I hate even using the word sell. But I also know that that there's going to be huge opportunity for people to see things, to tap into language, communities around maybe a specific, you know, language, for instance, or a particular topic. It'll be way easier to kind of target that group and find a way to maybe bring them in, rather than relying on them all being available on a Thursday at 6, you know. And I think that's a really interesting opportunity, because for Dublin, we show only once, and unless it's got a release plan, you won't see it again, you know. And the beauty of the online dynamic at the moment is that there's a window for you to do it, and that it's meant to be relatively easy for you to access it. But I don't know, Alan, in terms of what's kind of planned for GFF 21, how you're doing.
We're kind of right in the middle of decisions and that kind of hoping for the best, planning for all possibilities. Things can't be the same. But I mean, I quite like your optimism of it's a chance to reach people that you don't normally reach, or to give opportunities to get to films that people just don't get to, or they don't have the time, they don't have the means, they don't have the access or whatever. But yeah, I think obviously it will be a hybrid. I suspect it will be more digital than physical, although like you, I would prefer it to be physical. But you're even having those thoughts of, you know, a big part, well, a component of the festival every year is that you have a retrospective. And I like a good retrospective.
We've had a retrospective since bloody March, Alan.
But, you know, is that, do you still do a retrospective? How do you do it? Because normally, you know, you do an introduction before every film, and people kind of, it snowballs perhaps over the course of the 10 days, as they'll think, oh, actually, this subject's quite interesting. This director's really got me. I want to see more by this performer. You know, how do you manage that in that kind of context?
Yeah, I guess there's two elements in that. You know, we have the public screening side of things, and hopefully, you know, we can find new audiences digitally. But also for filmmakers from the industry side of things, you know, all of these festivals now going digital, I think it does make it much more accessible for filmmakers to attend markets that they would have otherwise not been able to afford. And the prices are cheaper. You don't have to think about flights or accommodation or anything like that. So I would really hope that we try, you know, when things hopefully at some point, touch wood, go back to normal, that we would still continue on that way of that kind of international scope that maybe you don't always have by just inviting people to the physical location.
Well, I like the geolocked. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say that as a punter going to film festivals, the thing, you know, empathy. So, like, you know, I mightn't have heard of a filmmaker, or mightn't have heard of the film, but you know, you'd be going around to different films, and you would be somebody, they'd tell you, oh, you know, this is a film by that. You know that film. You know, there'd be all that kind of conversation that you're also picking up. And one of the things maybe the digital festivals kind of work on is interesting. You were saying that, Gordon, when the filmmaker was always introduced at the beginning of a film in a festival, you always felt sorry for her or him, because they were there. You know, there was not normally in front of such a big audience, particularly if they're filmmakers, they look nervous. And so I always, as a person, always immediately wished for the film to be great for that person's sake, because you could almost feel the sweat lashing off them, and you wanted it to be good. So some way of finding a humanizing element to the digital experience. And I say it with respect, but it's like about wheeling the director in front of people, kind of going, look, this person made this, be kind, and not, you know, because your different things happen in your home. The phone goes, kids cry, you know, whatever other things happen. So you need to do a harder sell on saying to people, look, stay with this. And generally speaking, people who like films or you know, we're empathetic creatures, so we will want it to be good. We want that person's film to be. So I don't know. There's ways, because I don't know when the world will go back to the way it was, but there's ways. I mean, like Art's been at different film festivals, but neither, you know, over the last short while, neither Tom and myself have anything specifically to do with them, if you know what I mean. They're just there, they're somewhere, and we're losing connection to it. and it to us, in a funny way, and yet we are at home. We could, Tom easily could have done an introduction from, so it's a funny, I don't know.
You
Yeah.
haven't been doing that. Yeah. Have you not been doing those Q&As? Sorry, this is now going off a completely.
I did one. I have. I did one, and I think for two. Nash Film asked me to do one. I did one the other day. It was really nice, and there was another one for Turmina. I did a kind of recorded intro for the film. So those two, but there's been a good few others, and I would agree with Kuhn. I mean, it's kind of like you're kind of going, all right, yeah. Kuhn would email me and I'd be like, yeah, that's on. Oh, Eric was on there and things, and it kind of feels like. It feels a bit like I said to him the other day, we're the luckiest bastards in the world. You know what I mean? Like, because our film is getting into these lovely festivals. One in Greece, it won an award in a beautiful Greek festival, and it was on in a beautiful place in Sicily. And that's the dream when you're making a film. Hey, cool. Do you reckon someday we might be, eating a plate of pasta at the foot of Mount Vesuvius and drinking some fine wine, and our film might be on that evening? Yeah, that might happen. Yeah. Guess what? We did get into that festival, but we didn't get to eat pasta or drink wine. We got to kind of sit at home and, go shite.
You can collect the awards next year, Tom. Collect the awards next year. Go on a big tour collecting all your awards next year.
You could actually. We could do a tour next year of places we could have been to. So it is a bit sad for filmmakers, in that sense, that you're not getting that buzz from a festival, which is kind of what we all dream about and look forward to. Because, once your movie comes out, once it's out, it's over. Like, in a way, I mean, it does go on and does platforms and things like that. But, I mean, this is where it is for us. Like, this is where festivals are where you get to really see your kid. If the analogy of your child film being your kid, you get to watch your kid up on stage doing their thing and have that feeling of pride and happiness. And festivals are that place for a filmmaker and for producers, I think. But so I've missed that. Yeah, I have absolutely missed it.
And of course, you always get access to, or you can get access to, make appointments to meet other sort of producers or co-producers. But again, anecdotally, after you've had the meeting, you go to the bar and then you go, geez, that meeting didn't go well, and you start talking to somebody else, and actually that person turns out to be your connection, because they turn out to be, it happened to me, and I hooked up this Italian producer, and she sort of started showing me some scripts, and then that then obviously all came to an end because of COVID, but it's all of that. It's the totality of it all, like, seeing the live performance of a screening. So, yes, lots of reimagining. Hopefully, obviously, we're all hoping it all just goes away and goes back to the way it was. But, we can't, I don't think it should stay just the same. It's good to be in festivals. It's good for your film to see. I couldn't even look at the Nashville one because it was geo-blocked, if you know what I mean. Anyway, all that kind of. So there's lots of kinks in the system, and I suppose there's a lot of clever people involved. They will think of good ways to present it as we move forward.
Positive. I mean, I think what COVID has done to all of us and to everything is it's been absolutely shit. But but with that, I mean, I think it has made I think it'll bring new elements to festivals that weren't there before. And I think, Emma, what you're saying is true, that it might open things up to maybe if you can't be there yourself personally, that you can interact better online and stuff like that. And that kind of thing will really help. Or that, there'll be another chapter to a festival that will give it more of a longer life as opposed to that week that it shows. So yeah, I think there's reason to be positive, But personally, I wanted that bowl of pasta at the foot of Mount Vesuvius.
There is the interesting aspect to this, which is the kind of way in which people's careers are probably more in their own hands. I mean, I'm conscious that one of the things that's going to happen is that the screenings will be geo-locked, but obviously more and more industry events, as Emma said, are not, you know, and that you have panels and discussions. And so individual filmmakers' profiles will become more and more important, you know, and that you actually kind of nearly have to, you know, give yourself or create your own agency and get yourself onto panels, do you know what I mean, and contribute and engage and kind of become that kind of leading marketing tool for your film, which is kind of an interesting dynamic, because so many times, you know, a conversation with filmmakers was held in the front of a cinema, do you know what I mean, at lunchtime or something like that, and it was kind of like a chat. And now it's a much bigger thing that kind of gets, as I said, kind of exposure around the world, and can then become the point where they go, you know, interesting guy, I'd go and watch his film now, or how do I find his film, which is a completely reverse to the way in which it would have happened previously.
Or what's he making next, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
That kind of thing. I mean, like what also is great about festivals is obviously that you get to maybe plant seeds for the future, and you know that have, you know, exactly what you're saying, Gráinne, that you could end up with a situation because of what's happened, that, you know, more industry people get to meet you or get to see you're not insane, and that they could maybe work with you. And I think lovely producer, you know, that type of thing that you do when you meet a group of people. Director's nice, but lovely producer. Now, if I'm going to contact them, I'll definitely go with blah. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's going to increase, you know?
Yeah. Well, in terms of, you know, moving forwards, trying to encourage people to be positive, what advice would Gráinne and Alan, from a programming side, but then also from the filmmaker side, what advice would you give to filmmakers? Someone has their first feature film, and they're looking to submit to as many festivals as possible. What are some of the, you know, pitfalls to avoid?
Please tell me that you haven't made a film about being a struggling filmmaker. That would be my first bit of advice. There definitely be a tendency to get those.
That was my second film. That was my idea for my second film. Damn, you're right, Alan. You're right.
I would go with a good title. I think it's actually something that people really, really underestimate, is go with a title that a lot of people would want to see. It doesn't need to be one that makes you feel good or makes you feel like some kind of, you know, celebrated intellectual. Just go with a film that would make people want to see it. And then following on from that, in your logline or your synopsis, again, make it something that people would want to see. I just despair of how people describe their films. And because already, title first, and then the synopsis, I could be already going, oh, Jesus, no. Do you know what I mean? And that's not what you want people to be thinking when they're about to give you 90 minutes of their life. You know, to be quite honest, they will probably give you less than that. And you've probably started that process by having two really simple errors. And then the other thing I would say is always be nice. Charm is completely underestimated. Be charming. You don't need to do kind of, you know, whatever dark arts kind of like research into me and my family, but know something about the festival or something that I've screened before, or give me a sense that you actually rate my opinion enough to have found out even the tiniest bit of information, and I will immediately feel warmer towards you. And then the other thing about it is that, as I said at the very beginning, if it doesn't work out, please stay in touch and keep our relationship going, because there's always going to be a scenario where it's not this film, it might be the next film, or again, I might be able to recommend you for something. But in the same way that we talk about the good films that we've seen, we also talk about the complete horses that we have met. And we have a list, and Alan's laughing in order to not actually agree with it, but we all have a list of people that are you know, artistic geniuses, but are just way too difficult to get involved with, because we have small teams and we have only a certain amount of stress that we can actually put ourselves and our colleagues through during a festival. And if there is somebody who we think is going to be like that, you know, we're going to limit them. So, as I said, charm, research, be nice, and a good title. That would be my advice.
That is the title.
Right as well, because there are occasions when you'll sort of say, we've been offered this film and we're thinking of inviting X to come to the festival. And she will either say, oh, they were delightful, a joy, you'll have a great time with them, they really get on with audiences, make an effort. Or you'll get I wouldn't,
Voice.
Nightmare. So yeah, but also in terms of people submitting films with other festivals, there have been things of somebody sort of saying, submit a film, you've looked at it and you think it's quite interesting, we'd quite like to show this. And then you kind of realize that they're showing it to other people later in the year and trying to play you off against each other. And you think, do you not realize that we do talk to each other, that we know that you're trying to do this? So be honest. I think be honest is a good thing as well. Say what you want, say what you're after, say what you want to get out of the festival. And if we don't agree on that kind of thing, that's fine. There are filmmakers, as like Brian says, that you kept in touch with, or you said to them, look, I don't think this quite works because you're trying to tell this story and there's other stories and there's a bit of a muddle here in what you're trying to say, but you've got some interesting things here and come to us with the next film. And I think that has happened at least once. And charm is, I'm a big sucker for like a sob story. We sold the house, I mortgaged my granny, I haven't eaten in 2 years. Please have a look at my film. And you're thinking, wow, how can you resist? Yeah.
I think you said
I didn't like it, I'm sorry.
I think, Alan, that's a really, really good point, is that if you come to a film festival having a notion of what you would like from that festival. I mean, I know Kuhn and Tom and I talked about that as well, about what slot you think is going to maximize your involvement. Because quite frankly, if you have a world premiere or you actually have a kind of international premiere, do you know what I mean, or a national premiere, you're in the driving seat as a filmmaker. You have something which, is exotic, is curiosity, do you know what I mean, has its own kind of momentum. And I think if you say, I want competition, or I'd like a gala slot, or I want to be on a night when there's a possibility of a particular kind of press, I think that's really important that you say that, and that you say that to the festival and say, I don't want to be on Tuesday afternoon at 2 in your small cinema, do you know what I mean? And I feel really strongly that if you need me to do press, I will do it, and I'm happy to do whatever I can to help to get the right kind of response from the screening, But I hate when people say, oh, what cinema do you think it would be in? And I kind of go, well, do you see it in a multiplex, or do you see it in an art house film, or do you see it in a gala slot, or do you see it at a weekend? Because I think it's really important that both filmmaker and film festival know what both people want out of the screening. Do you know what I mean? And that you don't have that scenario where it's in the wrong cinema. Do you know what I mean? Or something like that.
The other thing that kind of warmed your heart.
I think my advice would be to, it's like what I said earlier, with regards to the big festivals. As a first-time filmmaker, not a first-time filmmaker, but it's my first feature, is be very careful about being disappointed about the bigger festivals, because it's really tough to get into those festivals. Like it really is. And I mean, like I remember people I would have met would have shown when I would have said, well, we're waiting to hear from Berlin, or we're waiting for Toronto, and I would get this kind of disappoint, or this kind of, oh, really, what, other filmmakers are kind of looking at you because they know your chances of getting in there are slim with a movie like ours, But what turned out to happen, what happened was that the path we ended up on was the right path, and that tends to happen if you meet the people behind the festival, if you get to meet someone like Grania or someone like Alan or someone like Emma, and you get to chat to them. I think that's the secret for somebody who's new to it, who's new to all this, is to get talking to people and be honest, I think, about where you're at, what your lack of knowledge is, and, where you would like to see the film go. I think that would be my advice to filmmakers: is get talking to festivals and find somebody who knows somebody and get emailing them, and don't be weird, just be nice, and they'll talk. You know, and even if you don't get in,
Don't be weird.
even if you don't get into the festival, get chatting to them anyway. You know, particularly if it's somebody who programs stuff that you think is similar to what you like or what kind of film you've made. Get talking to them, and that, you know, I think that's the best, because that's kind of what happened to us, and that was the best thing that could have happened.
Yeah. I mean, I remember we got a note from Sundance, but we'd connected with one of the people there in Galway, a film festival, and actually I then subsequently stayed in touch with her, and it was not that there's ever an actual nice no, but it was a really nice no, and you know, and a connection is made regardless, because you know, we're lifers at this game, so you know, we're going to cross paths again. So this didn't work out this time. That it's not personal, you know, it feels it obviously, but you know, it isn't, and so you still have relationships with these people, as Tom says. Yeah, I mean, it's just about being nice and yeah.
Yeah, keep moving forward. Well, I think that's all the time we have this afternoon, unfortunately. Guys, you can keep chatting for ages. But yeah, so be nice. Good title.
Don't be weird, as Tom said.
Don't be weird.
Weird.
Good one,
Be
Tom.
weird.
And I will say, so we have our Glasgow Film Festival, our late deadline is the 2nd of October. If you have a film you want to submit. So that's 8 days from now. And Gráinne, I believe your extended deadline's 16th of October.
Yes, 16th of October. Yeah. So if there's anybody who hasn't applied, please do. Shorts, documentaries, features, and some kids' films are also permissible, allowed.
Great. Okay, and we have next week we'll be announcing a bunch more kind of industry events that we'll be hosting with Glasgow Films. So do stay tuned for that and sign up to our newsletter if you've not already. But thank you so much, everybody. Hope everybody really enjoyed that.
See you.
Good luck
Bye,
with everybody.
All right.